everyone, and thank you for joining us. We're very excited to have our very first Tech Leaders Tell All event with me as your organizer. I've recently stepped up and I'm extremely excited to be leading this group. And we have put together a really, really great event for you today. So we're really looking forward to it in collaboration with the ThoughtWorks community. I'd like to introduce my co-organizer from the ThoughtWorks community, Steffi. Welcome, Steffi, to the Tech Leaders Tell All community. ThoughtWorks community is an extremely strong global community, and she's going to say a few words about this community that chose to collaborate with us on this event.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you for organizing this. We're super happy that we can collaborate on this. Just a very few sentences about ThoughtWorks from my side. For those who don't know ThoughtWorks yet, ThoughtWorks is an international software consultancy, and our teams are solving complex problems with technology. We have offices in, I think, 19 or 20 countries right now.
Wow.
I, for example, am in Germany, in the wonderful Berlin city. For those who don't know me yet, I'm Steffi, one of the community managers for ThoughtWorks Germany. We host a wide variety of events, from deep tech or leadership topics to events around diversity and inclusion. You can find us on meetup, so please visit us if you're interested. We're always happy about new community members, new input. And we are very happy that, especially for this collaboration with the Tech Leaders Tell All London group, because when we got in touch, it was quickly clear that we are thinking along the same lines when it comes to events. So we want to organize platforms for exchange and knowledge sharing. That's super important goal for us. And so it's the first time we are hosting this together, and I'm very curious about our panel for today. So thanks, Sharon.
Thank you so much for co-organizing this with me. And so I'm just going to quickly introduce the event and the speakers and let you all know how you can ask questions. So our event is about scaling engineering organizations, and we brought 3 industry veterans to be able to talk about this topic. We have Omar Bashir from ThoughtWorks, who will be speaking, Adi Shaham-Shavit from Clear, the EVP Engineering, and Ori Keren, CEO of LinearB. Each one will talk about a different aspect of scaling organizations. The lineup will actually be Ori, Omar, and then Adi. And they will do 3 short talks, and then we will have a panel discussion. So be sure to drop your questions in the YouTube that you can access through the meetup groups, both the Tech Leaders Tell All and ThoughtWorks if you join through that community. Or you can access the LinkedIn event at bit.ly/RTFM May event. Just so you know a little bit more about the communities that RTFM runs. So we also run the Cloud and Tech Online Meetup that focuses mostly on technology concepts. So you are also welcome to propose talks and join us there. And I like to say that it was the original online meetup even before COVID and everything happened. So definitely join that group as well and propose talks. And we're always looking for excellent speakers, like Steffi said, on technology concepts and really to share knowledge with our community. So be sure to join any of our groups and propose your ideas. So without further ado, I'd like to actually introduce our first speaker, which would be Ori Keren from LinearB. Yes, and so Ori will be talking about he came from an engineering role, and now today he's a CEO, and so he'll be able to share with you the types of metrics and the concepts that you need to maybe communicate with leadership in order to do a better job of scaling your engineering organization. So without further ado, I'm going to add Ori. Welcome, Ori.
Thank you.
We're really excited to have you here. So we are going to let you take it away with your slides. So let's get your slides up. Thank you, Steffi. Steffi will be coming back and introducing our next speaker. So let's go right ahead. And Ori is also a seasoned engineer and a CEO. So I think he can give us a really unique perspective on how to scale engineering organizations. So the stage is yours, Ori. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sharon, for the intro. So yes, I'm going to talk about how you can use metrics to drive continuous improvement, especially as your team scales. It's a topic that we're very much focused on and spending a lot of time on. So I'll do a very quick intro of myself. My name is Ori, like Sharon said, and I started as a software developer and actually spent, I would say, like 10 years as a developer. I almost thought I don't want to do anything else. I had like dream jobs, but at one point I wanted to make more impact. So I was promoted to a team leader, engineering director, and then a VP of engineering. And I had two interesting journeys as VP of engineering with two startups that we had to scale from 0 to 60 and 0 to 90. Both were acquired by AT&T and Cisco. And now I'm a first-time co-founder and CEO, and the natural thing was to help solve problems that I encountered, throughout my career. So with every role and every persona. In parallel to what I've seen in my career is like when we look at engineering metrics and the progression there, I would say that the first decade of the millennium was you had almost zero visibility into measuring something around engineering. I call it like it's an art era, right? You can't measure it. So the second decade was a little bit better because people were starting to do things and starting to have initiatives like to measure stuff. But the challenge that I think most of the things that people measured were focused still on the CTO level, which is not bad, but it stayed there, right? So the managers could see dashboard and could see like what's working and not working, but it wasn't deployed throughout the entire organization. But now, in the last 2 or 3 years, we live in exciting times if you care about engineering metrics, because there's this field that we compiled under the name Software Delivery Intelligence that's backed up both by research and academy, but also some great product that helps you drive improvement. So I'm going to cover some of them. I want to do another, maybe zoom in on like the journey, the engineering metrics journey. At the beginning, what you saw at the beginning with people that did like one-offs and measured stuff was output metrics that was mostly focused on individuals. So things that, everybody that is like now in this industry, we know that those are not the right metrics to measure, but people actually deployed. I had like the opportunity to speak to founders that and leaders that said, okay, ran a script every night that counted like how much lines of code every developer produced. And at the end of the week, they would go and search for the people that didn't produce a lot of code, which again, we know those are not the right things to measure. Don't focus on individuals. That's like pitfall number one, and don't focus on things that are output and focus more on teams and process. Then there was this great book called Accelerate, and this great research team led by Dr. Nicole Forsgren called DORA, that introduced like I would say like the DORA 4, the 4 main KPIs that are important if you want to have a good, high velocity engineering team. So they focused on metrics like deployment frequency, cycle time, MTTR. And by the way, I think there's like a latest research that they call SPACE, which also focus on the well-being of developers, which is not less important, like burnout and focus time and interruptions and all of that. This creates like the academic and research foundation for companies to go and build products that help deploy metrics, which was an important, I think, phase in the evolution. Research is great. Now you need like people. Same thing happened with the Agile Manifesto, right? So you had the Agile Manifesto in 2001. I actually had the opportunity to speak to some of the people that participated and signed it. And after that, you had tools like Rally and now Jira that help you implement some of the Agile principles. So exciting times to live if you care about engineering metrics. This is a slide I like to put. Like everybody wants to talk now about engineering metrics. So there's a market. There's definitely a need and a problem and acknowledgement that this is a thing that we need to solve, especially, again, as we scale organizations. I gave example of our podcast where like We have amazing guests that are coming to speak there, like Dana Lawson, who's like the VP Engineering of GitHub, Charity Majors, the CTO of Honeycomb, and more amazing guests. So definitely becoming a hot topic that people want to share their perspective and what are the important metrics to use. Here's what we learned really fast. Like, metrics are great. They will give you visibility. If you go from no visibility and darkness into, okay, I have some engineering KPIs and metrics that help me scale, you probably already in a situation, you did the first right step. So you put yourself in a situation that you can improve. But if you just use metrics, they don't give you the improvement that you need for dev teams. And I want to share a little bit of that perspective and what we learned and what is the right approach with the right metrics to deploy. Again, especially once you start scaling your team. So if you think about it, the most important unit to measure is not a developer, probably not your entire org, but rather a squad or a team. It removes some of the friction, right? Nobody wants to be stack ranked, and it's not the right thing to do. Development is a team sport. So any team, somebody can be like, cranking a lot of code. Somebody can take care of like deployment. Somebody is doing a lot of the reviews. It's actually it's a team sport. So you want to measure the chemistry and the glue between the team more than like, again, individual stack ranking. If you choose those three pillars, what we discovered, that's the best approach to deploy like a metrics program and an improvement program. So it's visibility, context, and workflow. And I want to give like a very short example that will demonstrate what it means. So I always like to use the example of a new developer that's onboarding to a dev team. It's always a pain. We want to help them to get set up fast. Usually we pair them with somebody. But sometimes what happens is once they start to push their first, pull request into like the dev pipeline, nobody's picking them up because really like people review code in clusters. So we didn't find the right cluster for that individual yet. So if you examine like the pickup time, which is a great metric to measure, every 2 weeks, right? Every iteration, you would see all of a sudden like the number goes up from like maybe 3, 4, 5 hours to a day. Now that's great because you didn't have visibility before and you see that there's a problem. So it's a great first step. But if you go one step further and you add context, because not all branches, PRs, and tasks in engineering are created equal, and you are able to identify the outliers, then you would see, hey, that's the new developer. We didn't pair them with somebody, and you got to help them. So that's great, right? You're not just waiting for 2 weeks to identify the problem. It's right there in your face, and there's a good data story to understand the problem. But there's a third step that you can even take that once you deploy a metrics program, which is like the workload and the automation. And this is the area where it can really, really improve. This is the area where you can say, you know what, I want to prevent the next time that it happens. I want to have rules and guidelines and guardrails that if a pull request is waiting more than 2 hours, let's alert the people that need to be alerted so they can pick it up. So once you have that kind of dynamic, you are able to not just see the thing and not just see the reason, but also prevent it and remediate it. So this if you have to pick one thing from my slide, pick this thing. Every metrics program, and we're going to talk about the right metrics, should have visibility, context, and workflow, and then it's a good plan. Now we're going to dive a little bit in this short session about like what are the metrics that are important that I found and we found like that are helping dev teams. And I started at the CTO level, even though I don't think it's the most important thing, first persona to focus on, but it is the stuff that the best metrics that you can give CTOs are even that simple, or a VP of engineering. It's even that simple view that says, here's your resource allocation. So I can tell you a story that when I was a VP of engineering, every product offsite that we had started with my CEO coming to me and say, please, I want you to come into the session and show what everybody is working on. And it took me like 3 or 4 days to collect all the data and normalize it and present it in a way that is comprehensive and people can, look at it and understand. So again, we live in a great era because now you just can use a system like that or, track the right things and see where people are spending time and what are they doing. Is this project solving more bugs or cranking new value? And this is great because it aligns, the engineering department with the business, which is the most important thing, by the way, to get a buy-in, to get more resources. So it's almost like a VP engineering communicates with CEO and executive peers. Very important, not the most important thing, but very important. So that's one. That's like the CTO persona. When we move to the what I think is the more important aspect, when we focus on teams, what I've seen, the metrics that I've seen that really drive improvement is if you look down here, there's this super metric called cycle time, and everybody using different variants, but basically it means how much time it takes from when code is being created until it's in production. And this will help if teams focus on trying to improve that, that's making amazing impact on the cycles and how fast the value is being driven, because there's this triple threat of metrics of PR size, how fast we're reviewing and picking up PRs, and our deployment frequency if we have CD. That if you focus on improving that, we've seen customers go from 15 days of cycles to less than a day, like a couple of hours, from commit until the code is in production. And what it will help you do is, even if it's not all the value and it's still like something that is shut down and it's still just a part of something, rollback is easy if you have a problem, right? If something explodes, it's like a small explosion. So if you keep your PR size small and you move them fast through the dev pipeline, that's almost always a recipe for success. The second thing for teams is like to scale quality right. So when we think about quality, the immediate thing that jumps to our mind is bugs. And this is important to track how many bugs exist and how many bugs were discovered, but there are leading indicators to quality. You can look at the quality of your process, right? So if we are reviewing code, which is a great quality gate, are we reviewing it enough? Maybe we're just like saying, hey, looks good to me, and we merge the PR. So that's one important aspect. And the other is code churn, which is code churn basically means like we released something and we implemented it again or parts of it again really fast. Like it never matured. It was like 2 weeks or 3 weeks old. And when the numbers go up there, basically what it means is that you have a quality problem or misalignment between the requirements to the to what was implemented. So the leading indicators are important. I decided to do a very short session because I know like there's a panel and etc. and curious about the questions, but I want to share last 2 slides and talk about the real scale factor that helps improve engineering organization. And this is the toughest one because you need developers to buy in to the journey of improvement, and it's not always easy. I always say that almost the most important engineering metrics that is hidden and nobody is measuring it today is how much of a buy-in you have, right? Let's say I'm a CTO and I see everything that's happening. I understand completely all the problems of my organization. How it won't help if like the teams don't know it, the developers are not aligned, we don't have buy-in from them. So the power is in the hands of developers, as we all know these days, and we got to make sure they're bought in. And here's the thing: if you read what's written here, shifting left continuous improvement and metrics is not about metrics for developers. It's about automation. I keep saying that, you know, if we really want to improve, we have to remind myself how it was being a developer and what were the things that were bothering me. And it wasn't actually, maybe, you know, every quarter I wanted to see where I am, look at the OKRs, goals, KPIs, that's great. But when I come in the morning, I want my PRs and the stuff that I'm working on to be pushed further, like downstream to the dev pipeline. So if we can create some sort of like automation that helps me understand everything that's happened to me, like downstream, meaning somebody reviewed my PR, somebody gave me comments, CI just failed, your code is about to be released. You know, the developers don't always know, not everybody gets to this, you build it, you ship it, you own it situation. Sometimes a lot of organization people write something, they move to the next task, and 2 or 3 weeks later, their code is being released. So probably they should know and go monitor something and see that everything is working right. So giving this automation and visibility to developers would help them where they want to get help. And once you do that and combine it with metrics, you see like the magic is happening, like you see here. This is a great example of an organization that said, okay, I want to get visibility. So I onboarded to a solution that provides, you know, those metrics. All of a sudden, like I got almost like a 70% improvement out of the box just by seeing the numbers. And then once I deploy the strategy for like workflow and automation, then it's where you can get the improvement up to like even 90%, as we can see here with the organization. So if I have to sum up, like it has to be, you have to adopt the right metrics without hurting the culture. You have to focus on 3 different personas, CTO, team leaders, but developers have the power, so you have to give them something that helps them like on the problems that they have concerns about. And once you are able to integrate all of that, then you probably have like a great strategy to scale with metrics. So those are my slides. I hope I didn't take more time than I should.
Thank you so much, Ori. That was very, very insightful. And there's already a question for you that might be easily to answer, maybe easier than the other ones that will come up. Simal is asking if you have any book recommendations on the topic. Maybe you have just a #1 resource, top resource that you could share with us. Is there something that pops up in your mind directly?
Yeah, the first thing is Accelerate, the book that I spoke about. That's like a must read. Really like all the concepts there. So if I have to choose one, that's the book I would recommend.
Great. Thanks. All right. And of course, if you have any more questions, please just add them to the chat box. We will collect them for the panel discussion after the presentations. And next on stage is Omar Bashir. So welcome, Omar. Omar is a technical principal working at ThoughtWorks London. He works in the enterprise modernization, platforms and cloud service line, focusing mainly on financial services. And Omar will talk about scaling engineering organizations in more traditional and highly regulated industries. Welcome, Omar. The stage is yours, I would say. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Steffi. Let me share my screen. Okay, I'll go into present mode. So as Steffi mentioned, that I work in the enterprise modernization service line and also work more on the financial services side. So I tend to work with a lot of traditional organizations. And a lot of this talk is based on an experience that I had for about 3.5 years on a mainframe offloading project that I worked on, which was taking the mainframe functionality off from a business functionality off from a mainframe and putting it onto AWS after re-architecting it and redeveloping it in Java. And the organization that we were working with, again, a very traditional organization. And for this project, we had to scale the development teams, the engineering organization, quite rapidly so that we could meet the delivery targets. And we found that as we scaled, the significant challenges started to appear around alignment and collaboration across the organization. So as an engineering manager, while it was possible for me to manage or break down silos within technology, there were significant challenges across the entire organizational silos. And the key thing that I had to work on was basically creating a shared understanding of goals and outcomes. And this is what this talk is largely about. Seeing what are the outcomes, what is the end result that we want to achieve, and then collaborating across your entire value stream to deliver that outcome. So, starting with what challenges do we face with engineering silos? The first thing that comes to if I'm in that situation again, which I find myself quite frequently, I look at what are my key concerns. And as an engineering manager, my key concerns would be to maximize the business value. And I can have that by having a shared understanding of the business strategy and goals. How do I lower friction in delivering that value to the users and the customers? That I'll be looking at optimizing my delivery process and pipelines and reducing my time to market. How do I increase the confidence in what I'm delivering is high quality? I'll be doing early, fast, and frequent testing for that. And the last one is, how do I reduce the failure demand? And this is an interesting topic over here. And sometimes I tend to spend a lot of time explaining this. It's about whatever time people spend on not delivering value, when you're not working on the features, when you're not working on the capability that you need to deliver. That is the time that you're actually looking at some sort of a failure demand. Either you're fixing bugs, or you're performing production support, or you are helping the QA setting up their test environments, or provisioning the test data and getting them up to speed. And interestingly, this happens. This failure demand is quite significant in most traditional organizations, and it is also a source of big frustration. Although I'm showing it over here as just one of the 4 aspects, but this tends to literally grind a lot of organizations to a very slow speed. So what do silos, what impact do silos have for a person like me when I'm trying to scale? When I was putting these points down, I was trying to order them as to what's more important, and I couldn't make up my mind. So I put them in the order that they came to my mind. But if I look at what silos do, it starts with the incentivization influence, and it's basically what kind of incentives do people have when they are working in silos, and they start coming up with the fixed set of roles and responsibilities that people have. So people are basically incentivized on the responsibilities, but not on the outcomes that they need to deliver. That then drives your local optimization. Then people start becoming more tunnel vision, looking more and more into what their team needs to deliver, rather than what the organization needs to deliver. And that is where things actually start falling apart quite quickly. You then get a reduced focus on value, and the focus largely then shifts towards activities or outputs rather than value and outcomes. And that leads to overcompensation, because people are not very clear about the outcomes that they need to deliver. Then they start working on speculative and undifferentiated value, thinking that if they produce this, that would be a big aha moment for the organization, without focusing on what is the actual value that the organization is trying to deliver. On top of it all, silos have a huge collaboration inefficiency. Your communication is largely vertical, and collaboration is largely through escalations. and that we all know is a huge challenge for most traditional organizations. And when all of these factors start acting together, the only thing that the organization thinks of is how do we govern, how do we manage, and then what you have is a heavyweight governance frameworks on top of the organization, which basically rely on formal handovers and sign-offs, and they are generally done by people who are quite distant from the activity and from the outcomes that they are required to deliver. So what do we? So when I look at all these things, so what are the key things that come to my mind? And it's basically actually driving towards outcome and delivering value. This is the key thing that I would like to pursue and make the team successful as they scale within the organization. So this requires achieving alignment, and to achieve alignment, an engineering manager should ideally be looking at achieving alignment across the org and within the technical organization. Let's start with achieving alignment across the organization, and this is where they need to understand what is the value that is being delivered, and how do they achieve delivering that value. So a key difference in concept over here is of value and benefit, and this is an interesting difference because a lot of business leaders also do not understand or cannot differentiate in the moment, cannot differentiate between that. Value is not reducing the cost. Reducing the cost is the benefit, or increasing the revenue. That's the benefit that the business gets once they have managed to deliver value to the customer. So value is leading and benefits are lagging. So if the business starts focusing more on value delivery, subsequently that what they will achieve is going to be the benefit. So this is where an engineering manager can start building relationships with business development and product management, and clearly understand the value and the benefits that they need to pursue, and then articulate those value and business in terms of meaningful metrics that the business needs to use to measure both of them. And this partnership also is very useful because engineering managers are in a very critical position to define or help the business define features or identify features that can have a significant impact, and those should be prioritized more over those that have diminishing returns, and even decommissioning the ones that have diminishing returns. Next comes alignment within tech. So this is the point where an engineering manager now has a good relationship with the business, with the product management, upstream and downstream of the engineering organization. This is where the engineering manager actually now starts talking about aligning their teams with the business strategy and the outcomes that they need to deliver. So a clear sort of lineage from the business strategy to the technology strategy helps build guiding principles, which act as guardrails for the teams and give them the freedom to adopt the practices and make decisions that would help achieve the outcomes that they need. So on top of that, once they are focused more on outcomes and they produce mechanisms to be able to achieve those outcomes, then the governance that happens over there, you have the opportunity to have that governance being very, very lightweight, and that helps achieve those objectives without too much overheads, both on the team and the business. So alongside all this, there has to be a regular review of the principles and practices as well as governance, and they have to be refined with the feedback from the team. So continuous feedback is very important in alignment within tech. So now that we have understood how we can try and have alignment within business and tech, what can we do to achieve scaling? while continuing to lower friction. Firstly, we look at the organization structures. I mean, this is the first question that normally people tend to ask: do we need to reorganize our entire organization? The answer is maybe, but a small bit at a time. You don't have to go and do a major reshuffle of your entire organization, because that would be a recipe for disaster. But whenever you start looking at reorganizing your technology, the Conway's law comes into play quite significantly, and this is where in the 60s, a gentleman by the name of Conway, he defined that the structure of the system is basically in parallel with the ways the communication flows within the organization. So communication flows within the organization based on how the organization is structured, the teams are structured. So if you structure your organization first and then you ask them to develop systems, those systems will mirror the structure of the organization. But if you want to build systems that are loosely coupled, domain-aligned or business-aligned systems, then it's a good idea to basically build the architecture of the system and then build your technology organization around the system that you're trying to develop. So that's called the inverse Conway maneuver, because you're defining the system and then defining the organization. Location strategy plays an important role in large-scale teams. So the experience that I'm talking about, we were in 5 different geographical locations, about 150 strong developers and QA. And our location strategy was, I would say that not the best of location strategies that we were working with at that time. And the challenge, it is a challenge that when you are scaling at that level, starting from a small team of 20-25 and scaling it up to about 150, what tends to happen is that cost starts becoming a major factor over there. So the key lesson that we learned over there was that low cost, one shouldn't go after low cost. One should basically look at achieving that capability and competence at an affordable price point. So that basically means is that we don't lower our standards. If we go to a distant offshore location, we don't lower our standards. We look for the talent that we need, and we have at the price point for that talent. At the same time, we should basically be looking at retaining sufficient capability in the proximity of the business and customers. It is again seen quite a bit that the trend towards our offshore in traditional organizations, what it means is that business is in one location and some technology function would be in a totally separate, different location. And that tends to start making creating severe challenges for the organization to operate. And lastly, in a traditional organization, there are basically, as I mentioned before, there are basically formal roles, titles, and responsibilities, and that's where the incentivization also kind of like comes into play over there, in enhancing those silos. So an engineering manager can actually partner with the HR in bridging that gap between the roles and responsibilities and the team and the outcomes. So what they need to do is basically try and structure how people should be measured against outcomes rather than responsibilities. And there is a small typo in my slides where it should have been team outcomes rather than responsibilities. So apologies for that. So that was on the organization side, but technology also plays an important role in reducing your friction as you are scaling. Domain-driven design comes into play not just when you are building that system. I mean, helps you with your inverse conway maneuver. Event storming is a magnificent exercise that every engineering manager needs to perform with their architects to identify the bounded contexts that become your key architectural elements around which you can actually structure your teams, and also achieve alignment, because in an event storming exercise you have people, representatives from every part of the organization giving inputs. So you'll have alignment, you will have your technology structure, and then you can build your organization structure around that as well. And then your domain-driven design is not a static artifact. You need to review it regularly to maintain alignment, to maintain that alignment. Another very important point that people tend to miss out is cross-functional requirements, commonly known as non-functional requirements, but in ThoughtWorks we tend to call them as cross-functional requirements. In most traditional organizations, they tend to be relegated way behind functional requirements. So the key focus is get the functionality done, we'll make it faster, we'll make it more secure afterwards. And that's a fallacy. Cross-functional requirements basically determine the architectural styles that you need to actually have your system built and deployed in a manner that it is useful for your customers. So if you don't have your cross-functional requirements soon enough, you will only have a part of your architecture, not the whole of your architecture. And once you do determine your cross-functional requirements later on, trying to map or put in the right architectural styles into your technology leads to a huge amount of rework and also to a huge amount of failure demand. Traditional organizations also focus a lot on reuse, and they think that if they reuse a lot, then they save a lot of effort and they save a lot of money. But reuse alone, a focus of on reuse alone, tends to introduce a huge amount of coupling. So that is why it is more important to focus on decoupling over reuse. And once you decouple, you tend to achieve reuse as a side effect a lot of times. And if you don't, then it means that it wasn't meant to be, that capability wasn't meant to be reused anyway. And the last point is about divergence and diversification. It's again very, very similar terms, but two very different meanings over here. Diversification is usually business-led or business-focused, and it is shaped by the CFRs, whereas divergence is generally tends to be more speculative and tends to have higher maintenance cost and no additional value. So whenever you think about your diversifying your tech stack, think about it from a business perspective, shape it with your CFRs, and you will find it to be a more positive exercise than divergence. Next, once we have all these in place, then we are looking for optimizing our flow. And this is where some of the metrics that we have heard about just a few minutes back come into play as well. But you are basically looking at increasing your throughput, and that is usually achieved by delivering value in smaller increments. And this is a big mindset change for product and business, because they tend to think in large features and big products. And a successful engineering manager can influence them to actually deliver them in smaller increments, minimum marketable products. And at the same time, having the confidence in the means of confidence. So the means of confidence are testing, that we have effective testing. But the confidence in those means of confidence is that that our testing frameworks and testing platforms are basically stable and reliable, and they allow for efficient testing. I spoke earlier about reducing failure demand. It's about continuously improving our supportability and recoverability. So production incidents, support that we provide for QAs or other teams, we should be looking at how we can automate that, or how we can improve improve upon that, so that we spend less and less time on our failure demand. And finally, once we have our pipelines in place, we should be looking at automating our compliance and governance. One of the interesting things that we talk about are architectural fitness functions. They can be implemented within your pipelines, and they ensure architectural governance automatically. In terms of metrics, the 4 key metrics, we heard about them a few minutes ago, and we can also have metrics more on the lean side. So, for example, lead time for value, basically from the idea, from the time an idea is being discovered all the way to it's being delivered to the customer. And this is something that an engineering manager can talk to product management and business development about. And in the end, nothing gets done without having a great culture. And at the top of the great culture is basically psychological safety. And some of the easiest ways of achieving psychological safety is not to have people's name superimposed on systems names. It's very common to say John's service crashed, or Libby's screen wasn't working. So it should be the account management screen didn't work, or the payment service crashed, rather than putting people's names, because that makes people very defensive about it. If we are more conscious about it, what we tend to have is that we collectively learn from our mistakes rather than being individually defensive about them. At the same time, with psychological safety, growth mindset tends to foster. People become more conscious about their development needs, and then they actively seek help for improving. Transparency is key across the organization. If an engineering manager can achieve that in partnership with business development and with product management, that is key for creating and seeking the alignment that I have been speaking about. And finally, having what Amazon says, customer obsession, basically focused on delivering value to the customers. So that brings me to the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Omar. What a great talk. You talked about so many things that are so important. I really liked how you spoke a few times about breaking things down to smaller chunks and delivering kind of small iterations similar to Kaizen from the DevOps community. So I thought that was really practical and useful advice. We actually had an interesting fun fact that came in as a part of your talk, which is that many times in the context of Conway's Law, because you mentioned Conway's Law, and I didn't know that there was an inverse Conway's Law, by the way, and I learned that from your talk, but that communication doesn't always necessarily, like the communication structure doesn't always reflect Conway's Law, so you also have to learn how people communicate, and that's from Felix Mueller, who mentioned that. So that's actually a very interesting tip to think about. We will have more questions for Omar after. We will have a panel discussion. Really great talk. And now, without further ado, I'm going to introduce Adi to the stream. Hey, Adi. So
Hi.
Adi is one of the more impressive engineering managers that I had the pleasure to meet. And, through the community, she was a keynote speaker at DevOps Days Tel Aviv, which I also co-organized. And she's going to talk about engineering scaling engineering teams from the engineering perspective. We had very interesting talks about metrics and what you can communicate to leadership. We had interesting talks about highly siloed organizations and how to help break that up. And so now let's talk about a little bit about practically within the engineering organizations, the different things that you can think about. So I'll let you take it from here. Adi today is the VP Engineering at Clear. She was also the VP Engineering at Lemonade, a really cool insurance tech company, and AppsFlyer, the leading mobile attribution platform in the world. Live person, so she has quite a bit of experience. Go ahead and share your slides, and then we'll let you take it away.
Just a second.
And just what was happening here in the background that you folks don't know about until Adi shares her slides is that Ori and Adi were actually talking about, she's taking his talk from the VP engineering side and he from the CEO, and she said that a lot of the things that he said really resonated. So that's interesting. We'll talk about that in the panel.
Yeah.
All right, Adi, take it away.
Okay. Very happy to be here. Talk about some of other aspects of how to design your team for scale. So as a senior engineering manager who is taking many companies from just a few engineers to entire teams at global scale in hyper growth, I have learned quite a few lessons along the way on coping with growth and scale on a diversity of fronts. My goal here is to share with you today to help senior technical people with deep knowledge in code, system architecture, and more, who would like to understand how to take their career to the next level, and take your technical skills into the scaling part. I hope that this will provide you some insights on how to design not only your system, but also your team to support the business to scale. So as Sharon mentioned before, just to share off some of my own background, I'm working in the industry for many years, always in engineering positions, working like different companies, but then joined LivePerson when there was only 60 people, left after many years when there were 900, and was experiencing many different changes inside the company and inside the engineering team as well. I think Omar was talking about some of that, how we changed structure and discipline and so on. Before I left LivePerson, I was managing like a huge team of developers, DevOps, QA, and managers, and then I was doing like a huge switch, move to AppsFlyer as the 10th person in the company to manage the R&D team. Started when there were like only 4 engineers, and during my time there, during the 3.5 years that I spent in the company, I was able to scale the team to 70 people, including like offshore team and different type of skills and others that we'll talk in fewer slides ahead. In addition, in AppsFlyer, I was also have the fun to scale the system from handling 200 million events per day to 20 billion events per day, which was like really fun. As engineers, we always tend to say that the system is linear scale. Well, it's linear until it's not anymore. So we kept getting like to the next bottleneck, and like it was really interesting to see that. And the company was scaling to a few hundred people. During that time, we were able to provide more and more value from the same sets of events and provide additional business value to the clients. I then moved to Lemonade, was joined when the company was a little bigger and like in more advanced stage, but the engineering team was pretty small. I started when there were 5 people in the engineering team, was able to scale the team to different teams. We moved to work in squads, what's known as squads. Also took some more involvement into the going into different countries. So Lemonade is an insurtech company, taking part of going into different countries, meaning different like regulation rules and different security rules, and then moving to Europe as well. During my time, I moved to Clear, to a startup called Clear, which is trying to provide a system for very large enterprise companies to do settlement and reconciliation at the end of each period that are working together between them by using a private blockchain network that can enable them to sign a contract and transform data in between. And in addition, in the last year, I also established, together with a partner, a program for VP R&D in scale-up companies called LEAP. So for me, scale is like climbing a mountain. It's long, exciting, and full of unexpected challenges along the way. It is crucial for you as an engineering leader to know where you are heading so you don't lose your way. And to continue with that analogy, whenever I meet people, they are really happy and really want to work in like what we call unicorn, in like these big successful companies. I think for me, the path of taking a company from like a really small startup into a unicorn is even even more fun than getting to that when it's already there. I think that this is a great career ladder for everyone to experience with. In some cases, you will find yourself doing in 1 year something that you will do in other companies in like a lifetime of career. So let's move on and talk about scale. So mostly when we talk to engineers about scale, that's totally translated for them to traffic. So traffic of events, traffic of more machines, more data, more users, more visitors for the website, and so on. In the coming few minutes, I would like to point out how different type of scale should be handled and how they should be detected. So scaling challenges are diverse. And if I had to categorize them into 3 primary categories, they would be the 3 T's. So it would be traffic, team, and territories. Let's deep dive and see what are the characteristics of each one, the unique challenges, and how you as a technology leader can help and manage each one of them. So we start with traffic. This is probably like the easiest one, the most obvious one, and the easiest to identify. You will start feeling growing pains as you see increased numbers of events coming, more users, more visitors, and so on, more clients in some cases. I think the biggest risk in this kind of traffic is to have system failure that prevent from the users from using the system or using some components in the system. And as engineers, it's definitely our job to prevent that. I think maybe the biggest, like no one will tell you need to support more traffic in the company. That's definitely underlying job that we need to make sure that we do that. I think if there's one thing that I can emphasize is go and talk to the business, go and talk to the sales team, because in the sales team, you will actually see that that potential traffic coming over. You will actually see that on their potential pipeline and potential upscale for existing clients. So for me, whenever I want to handle that kind of traffic, I would like to understand what I'm like expected to tackle. What will be potential traffic for me in the coming few months, in the coming year or so? And that's helped me to analyze and understand what am I facing. So I think like the biggest thing that we should be able to do is to be ready to support ongoing scale of the system. Usually it's been done best by using automation, like auto scaling and downscaling, auto deploy, and so on. That leads me to the next item, which is definitely the DevOps tools. I would definitely invest and work a lot about DevOps tools in that case. For me to do that, best will be to understand the next bottleneck. So that will be a combination between talking to the business, working directly with the business and the sales team, but also like looking very carefully at my system and understand really what would be the next bottleneck. What is the potential bottleneck? So there is like the 60% rule. So whenever you get to the 60% of something and you see that's all like ongoing increase on that like service or on that demand or on that data, then you know that you need to think about the next step. In some cases that will come really, really fast. So you have to maybe come up with a short-term solution like maybe expanding the number of machines that you support. But in some cases, you know that in advance and you can be very well prepared and do like the right solution for that. The things that you usually get along with this type of scale is that you usually need more team to support the system, more teams to support this like ongoing demand from your infrastructure. And the underlying stuff is that usually it will be growing cloud expenses. So usually you have to prepare your CFO for that. The second type is the team scaling. So in some cases, some companies don't have like a huge scale, so the system can like support more clients easily or more traffic easily, because it's not about traffic. It's not about like the amount of events that are coming. Okay, that's like can be a different type of business. But in some cases, when a company will be in a scale-up mode, you will have more people. You will need to hire more people. You need to hire more people to your team, and you will need to hire more engineers and understand how to manage them. I think in Ori's session, he was talking about how sometimes when you need to understand where the bottlenecks are inside your process. And in some cases, like the major risk in that is sometimes you will have more people, but lower velocity for the team. So that's like a huge risk in my point of view, because like the business will invest a lot of money in hiring more engineers, but then will actually get less value from more people. I think like some points that I was writing here that are definitely very important to make sure that you do. So as soon as you understand that you have to hire more people because you have to actually stick to growing business plans and growing like business demand from your team, I would definitely invest a lot in onboarding plan. This is something that is always pay back. So as soon as like you have this well-structured onboarding plan and like well-structured tools and like a buddy system or tasks that you know that it's very good and very efficient for new developers, that's definitely something that you need to take care of very well. The second thing is to plan your infrastructure to support many teams, and Omar was talking about how like you have to support like this isolation. So if right now I have like 30 people working on one infrastructure, and maybe it's okay to wait once a day for the deployment, or once a day for the ability to do the full testing flow, then it might not be okay when I have like 60 people on the same infrastructure, because that will be like more people waiting and then more waste of time. So make sure that the infrastructure is actually supporting more people on the same infrastructure. In many cases, in many startups, you start with only developers or maybe developers and DevOps. And then as soon as the system grows, you see that you actually can get use of other functions that you didn't have before. So QA support is one example that I often see, but there are others that you might be able to see, like specific skill set of people that like it's not worth to bring when we have like less people, but when there is more people, more teams, more people working in parallel on different projects, then that will be very efficient. And they need sometimes like different tools or different working process. And like the last two is actually like very similar. As one is to automate every internal process that you might have done manually so far. So if you can automate them, let's say if there are like some database fixes that you will do manually, or some backup that you remember every day to come in the morning and do that, or stuff like that, try to automate them to save time, because when you have more people, that can save you a lot of time. And the second one that is pretty similar is to formalize best practices. So some can be from automate them, some can be from like creating your dev process to follow that, but I think that's definitely worth the time. The third one is less obvious, and let's talk about, and that's territory. This is coming when the company has a product that is like highly sensitive or highly focused on culture or on a regulation that is specific to a location. It does not usually refer to a company that has a product that is working like everywhere and just going to sell in a different territory. So I think An advice that I was actually using myself, but also heard lately from like a VP engineering in like really good scaling company. If you're working in regulated environment, if you're working in fintech, health tech, or other regulated environment, you should learn the regulation very well yourself, because if you don't do that, you will have to count on people that know the regulation and will have to answer you to like whether you can do this or that. And that might not be the best and optimal solution for you. That might be what they know about the potential solution. But if you know very well why the regulation is asking for something, then you might be able to come with something more creative to resolve the same issue. It's the same as we usually tell developers, ask the product manager what the client would like to do with the system, or why is it good for, and not like how the button should like look like. So for me, that was like really a aha moment when I was supporting move from with Lemonade from US to Europe, and I was trying to understand what really the GDPR law needs for me, and what really the GDPR needs from me in my specific use case. And I was getting like different advice from the lawyers that were working with us on that expansion, and I was actually went to read some of the law. And that enabled me to actually have a really intelligent discussion and ask, okay, so if I have this type of insurance, then I can actually have the same data or the same mechanism that I'm using for the US? And the answer was yes, just saved me a lot of time. And the second thing that we were talking about is related more to culture when territory expansion. So I would like really recommend to use language and culture expert, and not try to do it yourself or try to find someone that will do it for you from the team. I think it's like usually not very well handled, and it's really too bad. So let's go over this very simple algorithm that I'm usually using to help you as tech leader to support your company needs. So we'd start with analyzing, and as we said before, you have to be very much connected to the business. So if you haven't done that so far, that's like really good timing to do that for you. That's also how you scale yourself from just being like an engineering manager who understands how to best work with your team and how to best like activate the task and the project and the deployment and the infrastructure, to also what business value is it related to, and like what's really the company needs from you. So go talk to the business, to not just the product manager, which is definitely usually the counterparty for us, but also to the sales team, to the client, to the customer success team, even the CEO of the company. As soon as you know that, I think the most important thing is to analyze whether that scaling is temporary or here to stay. Okay, whether it's like an ongoing process that's like will keep growing and keep like going, or is it just like that one time jump and that's it? Okay, because that's like totally different to approach that you will have to take. The second thing will be to understand what type of scaling do you need, your company needs from you, okay? So whether that traffic, team, or territory, or sometimes it might be more than just one. You need to really carefully understand your business for that, because like as engineers, we always say, oh, the system needs to support that amount of scale, the system needs to support that amount of traffic. Well, maybe. But maybe it's not really crucial at that point of time for the company. And if it's not crucial, you need to save your company the time for doing some like premature optimization that the company don't need yet. And the third thing that's like, to be really brutally honest, try to like look inside and understand really carefully whether you, your team, or your system might slower the company's growth, okay? Because that's something that you would like to prevent. So if that's you, you need to understand how to scale yourself, how to scale your abilities, how to get help, how to change your abilities to do things differently. If that's your team, then that's come the team structural change and maybe better training and maybe to bring different people into the team. And if that's the system, then that's the easiest one for us as engineers usually. The second part of this algorithm is go into action. So plan and execute. So here in the plan, it sounds like pretty simple, as like you have to plan and combine between like short and long term, but it's like really not that simple. And that's like a whole art of how you manage your technical backlog by understanding what's like short term, like must happen right now items, and what will be like more longer term stuff that you need to also be able to create and be also able to allocate the time for both together, which is, it's pretty interesting. It's like, I think a whole discussion for a totally different session. And the priorities must be created to align with the business and what the business needs from you and from your team. And execute. So like, I'm not going to say that there is a magic, because there is no magic. As we said before, it's hard and ongoing work. But just like keep doing what you do and keep getting improved and keep working on the plan that you created before that. I think for me, like good point in time to do these plans is might be like at the beginning of the year or before the year starts, when the sales or the business will do the plans for next year. And usually like every quarter is pretty good. And sometimes you see like life-changing event that will change. You will get like this huge deal with someone, so that might be also a good, important timing, or might be like important collaboration with another partner, which is also might be important. And to summarize like this mountain image, so I think working in hyperscale companies is a lot of fun. I really like that. I think it's like amazing. Will provide you amazing and like the best engineering challenge that you will ever have. So when life gives you mountains, put your boats and hike. That's like I think what I usually try to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adi. That was a really great talk. 3 awesome back-to-back talks. And we still have plenty of listeners, and this is the time to bring back Omar and Ori. And now is the time for the panel discussion. So we are going to ask some questions that we prepared in advance, because we want to hear some more from their excellent knowledge. And there were plenty of questions that came in from the community. So Steffi and I will be sure to ask all of those questions that came in. So I'm going to get started with a question for Ori. And so you had spoken about the important metrics, and it was really funny because the things that you communicated, Adi said, oh, I feel that really, really closely. So just really, again, to summarize like as consistently or as concisely as possible, what are some of the metrics or data points that can be communicated to leadership as an engineering manager to get the resources that you'll need in order to scale for engineering managers like starting their journey?
Yeah, so I think it's a combination of first, like the resource allocation map, like, okay, I know, like maybe it's not like showing what are we working today. It really like starts the best conversations like with the executive team and with your peers, by the way, like when I see conversations with sales and marketing, because again, it's a lot of it is in the business context. Then the second thing that I really seen successful is if you pick like the 2 or 3 things that you believe in, and you draw a line between the engineering metric to the business metric. And sometimes they have actually like even like names that sound the same. So you can say, hey, good cycle time will shorten your sales cycles because the value is even faster. And so it's catchy. And people can relate to that, and you can repeat it week after week in the executive room, and code churn, a lot of code churn will lead to customer churn. So there's like 2 or 3 that I like to draw a line, and then it's really helpful to get the buy-in from the organization.
Excellent. Steffi, I'll let you take it away with a question from the community.
Great, thank you. So I guess this question fits perfect for Omar. Timothy is asking, the performance of strong, long-standing contributors can be impacted by the need to move from delivering to onboarding and upskilling new staff. Can they create a safe environment for new people to learn our stack and tech? What do they need to align with minimally for the relationship to work?
Thanks, Steffi. So it comes down to providing that psychological safety and that environment where they are able to make mistakes. I mean, you learn the most from your mistakes, and being able to safely make those mistakes, not just for themselves, but also for the organization and for the technology and for the rest of the team. So it shouldn't be that I wrote a little bit of code and I thought that was right. I checked it in, merged it. If I do have a peer review, I put it through a peer review and somebody didn't notice that there was a bug in there. They merged it and things broke in production. That shouldn't happen. That you should be able to catch those things sooner, and then the subsequent process should be that of coaching and learning. So it is again giving people that time and freedom to experiment on your tech stack in limited sort of ways. So if your technology is built in loosely coupled components, it is a lot easier for somebody to, if they want to learn how that component works, to spin that component up alone on your laptop and just play around with it and see how it works, rather than having to spin up that entire system because it's tightly coupled and needs everything under the sun to run. So those architectural choices also have a key consideration in enabling your newcomers to get up to speed very, very quickly and incrementally learn as they go. So from the first ticket that they get, they focus on that one service or a little bit, and then incrementally build their knowledge.
Perfect. Thank you, Omar.
Yes, that was a great answer. I actually found it quite interesting that as senior leadership, all of you, both from the engineering side and, or you also touched on like kind of how critical it is for engineers when they're, kind of moving up the stack to really understand the core business and be able to really understand what it is that they're delivering and how this is translated through their product, and really aligning the business with the engineering is actually something that was very interesting to me to hear. I think for the sake of time, we're actually going to focus for the most part on the questions that came in from the community, because they're here and they're listening and they want to get answers to their questions. So I think we're going to move on with another question from the community. So Eitan asks about the biggest issue with metrics is the buy-in aspect from the developers. They usually treat it like as a nagging issue for management, and it has to bring them some value as well in terms of automation, shift left concepts. And it's interesting because we had another person ask a similar question. So Taryn also asked something about, he said that metrics such as lag time for PRs, reviews, many times engineers they don't realize the value of the metrics, and it just seems like something that's being tracked by management. So I would love to hear your perspective, Ori, on that, and also maybe Adi. I feel like they're very similar parts of the same question.
Adi, you want to go first, or
maybe I can start because I'm not biased, right? It's not like
Sure.
Yeah, I think like there is no, we don't want to measure the developers. We don't want to measure how much time it took them to write like each line of code, because it doesn't make sense. If we measure stuff that will actually make their life better, let's say that I'm measuring the time that my CI process takes every time, okay? That's brilliant for developers, because that can enable me to actually shorten the time and have them like run faster, right? So if I'm measuring the time of PR and I actually see that there are bottlenecks, or I can see that like some of the process can be like shortened, or we can like maybe cut some cut some of the time or enable them to work with other people faster, then that's like what we need to do. Ori?
Yeah, excellent. So, Ori.
Yeah, so I think the most important thing is to get that buy-in, right? This is why I said, like, I think if you're an engineering leader, you shouldn't say, here are the things that we're measuring, maybe at the org level, but every team should say, these are the things, that the values that are important for us. And once they have control on it, this is what I really found out, like, there's no maturity models for that team. There's no, we're now here, now we're progressing. Each team has their own journey and their own things that matters to them. So if they commit to the things that are important for them to measure, and again, they can configure and they can control and they can create a baseline and they want to say, this is how we want to improve, then you get that buy-in, because it's me. I set up like my goals. It's not somebody else saying, these are your goals. So that's like one very important principle. And again, the second important principle is to get it like to the ground, like to really concrete things that help me operate better. Like you said, my CI is taking too long. Yeah, so like we should improve it. Like I think I saw a question. The review process is too long. So if the review process is too long, why should I care about it? Of course I should care about it. It will make me like 10 context switches, because I comment here and then I'll go do something else. So again, but the most important thing is for them, like to say, this is what we're trying to optimize, and then you get like that buy-in. That's what I believe in.
Yeah, maybe here's a community question that somehow belongs there. How do you measure failure robustly across a diverse set of teams and domains?
And I will let Omar take this one, and maybe Omar Nadi.
Yeah, so it's an interesting question, because failure depends on the customer and the user of your technology. So it's basically, you need to understand who is feeling the pain. So you need to first of all find out what is the pain. If a user is not able to pay their bill from their mobile phone, that's a failure. And you may find that as you start looking at that user journey, there may be lots of diverse systems inside your stack where it is hitting, and you could have failure. So I believe that if you have some decent monitoring and alerting capability, that would pick those failures out. One of the things that I've learned in one of my previous roles was of proactive alerting. So you alert before a failure happens, because a lot of times the failures happen because of an impending problem that is happening, that is becoming worse and worse and worse over time, and at some point things break down. You have disk capacity issue, or your database volumes are not in the right shape or form. So if you have the right kind of monitoring, that is where you have set the high water marks, then you will be alerted well before in time, and you will be able to take proactive measures to reduce those failures. So as you are picking up the user inconvenience or user pains, and if you are serious about it, you will look at what journeys did they follow throughout your system, pick out the points where things were failing, and then you will put, if that did not have the right kind of monitoring and alerting in place, you would put that monitoring and alerting in place.
Yeah, maybe I can continue. Like I think it's a brilliant answer. I'm a huge fan of like monitoring and alerting. I think it's like seriously, it's the best thing that can happen to a team, that like we have the optimal coverage. Of course, there is never the optimal, right? We always find the next thing that was not like alerted on time, and that's like should be fixed like the next morning after we finish handled the incident. And I also find it very useful, and I know Ori was talking that not all the teams has the luxury of like actually feeling the production, but for me, like I would do the maximum I can to make the developers be like as much as possible, like really connect to the production, because as soon as you just tell them, no, you just write your fancy code and then like someone else will handle the production, that's the minute like you actually get losing time and this ability to actually analyze like cascading failure in the system.
I agree.
Ori, I think you can chime in here because I think this was a question that was highly relevant for you as well.
No, I think Omar and Lee covered it very well. Like if I want to just, just follow up on what Adi said about like, the distance between production to dev teams. The ultimate thing, of course, is like you code it, you ship it, you own it, you monitor it. That's like the best thing for dev teams. But yeah, I had a privilege and opportunity to see a lot of dev teams in the last 2 years. And it's not always like that. We talk about DevOps. Like DevOps is implemented, I would say, like in 30% of the organization. And there's a lot of like things that are not like not all the teams are at the same place. So this is why there's still like need in those like alerts and in those like updates that are telling you what's happening to your code downstream.
Very interesting. These are great, such great insights. Last question that I can see from the community, unless there's something else that you see, Steffi, but do you have a good recommendation to distinguish between correct interpretation of metrics and false positives? You mentioned review of depth measured by number of comments. I'd expect many reviews of brilliant implementation to lead to only one comment, says Ralph from the community. So this is, I'm guessing, is addressed to you, or because that was something that you had mentioned?
Yeah, it's a great question. And actually, like, if you look at review depth, one of like the other things that we're looking and others are looking, it's not just about like the number of comments, but also, how you have test coverage, right? So you can have a review coverage. This is like the amount of like stuff that was changed. Did I cover everything with one review? Of course, I don't need to cover everything, but you can measure that. But maybe like a general answer for false positives and real things, at the end of the day, it comes back to the same thing that I said before. You got to pick the things that you believe in and attach yourself to them. So long-term, those review depth numbers will align. I've seen a lot of like customers, you will see your top reviewers, the one that, again, I had like a developer that worked with me that I wanted him to review all my PRs. He would dive in 3 hours, read the code, said, hey, what did you think about it different way? It's like, so in the bigger picture, like the numbers will align, but I can definitely agree and see you can definitely agree that there are false positives like these questions. Sometimes like one comment could be like an amazing, and one change could be the change that like fixed everything. So unfortunately, no like one silver line or one like clear answer. The context will help you if you like dive into that and you start and it's not just about numbers. If you remember my conversation from before, the context. Okay, I see a number, you can also dive and see the reviews and can see, oh, this was actually a deep one.
Interesting. And so since this was the last question from the community, I guess we'll be happy to hear from everyone. So Omar, feel free to chime in as well. And
Yeah, so I'll loop back to what Ori said in his presentation, which was like keeping the size of the pull requests short. And I've practically seen the effectiveness of pull requests being peer reviews being exponentially being more effective as you reduce the size of your pull request, because people only have so much attention span. If you give them 10,000 lines of code to read and review on it, they'll obviously. But if you review, and that comes to committing code more frequently. So even if you're not complete, having some sort of kind of like toggling in place, like and then being able to commit your code more frequently and being able to create more frequent short pull requests, that reduces the chances of false positives or even missing things out going forward.
And Adi, before you also just respond, I'm going to just tell our listeners and viewers, since there's a little bit of a lag, that this is the last call for questions. So get your last questions in so we can ask our awesome panelists who will be able to give you a lot of wisdom from their years of engineering. And so go ahead, Adi, and we'll see if anything else comes in.
Yeah, I just like maybe like in 2 sentences just to add to what Omar and Ori was saying. I think there are like flavors of engineers. So you might, like as engineering manager, will like to choose to manage your team differently, which is totally fine. But there's some bad stuff that you can do. So maybe like you need to distinguish between like the stuff that are like a bad engineering or like more old school way that we already learn how to do it better, and some stuff that are more like your own flavor.
Okay, so I don't see anything else from the community. Wow, thank you all so much for joining us. We had quite a few watchers, and I'm not surprised because we had quite an impressive panel here. Thank you all for being with us, Ori, Omar, Adi, Steffi, for your collaboration. If you'd like to wrap it up with a few words about your community and tell folks where they can join and get involved with your community as well. And then I'll also do a last shout out to my communities. Thank you so much, Ori, Adi, Omar. It was really, we got excellent feedback from the community. The talks were really just very stellar.
Yeah, just a quick thank you also from our side, from ThoughtWorks. I'm happy to, or I'm looking forward to do that more often and using also this new streaming experience for us. Yeah, it was fun listening, and thank you, Sharon, for organizing.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Steffi, and the ThoughtWorks community for joining us. So one last shout out to our group. So you can also join the Cloud and Tech online meetup. This is where you can find us, bit.ly Cloud Online Meetup, or you can also join the Tech Leaders Tell All if you came through the ThoughtWorks community. Really huge thanks to our panelists and the excellent session that we had today. Really great questions that came in. And we hope to see you at the next one. Tech Leaders Tell All will be a quarterly event. So you can join us for the next one, which will be in the next quarter. And thank you all so very much. Have a great day and evening wherever you are at. Thank you.